Hi there, Grant Eagle here again, and welcome to this video where I'm going to literally tell on myself and show you how I used another small facet of the Magneto effect to generate over £240,000 worth of pipeline profits for a management consultancy firm using free ad space. So let's take a look at how I did this, and as I go through I'll point out some of the psychological triggers and positioning that made it work. Okay, so let me give some background first. The management consultancy firm specialised in working with golf clubs. The service these guys offered was to go in and work with golf clubs that were struggling due to increased competition in the market and to help golf clubs restructure so they could stay in business and run a profitable ship. When I first started working with them, they'd done an advertising deal with a trade magazine that was circulated to all the traditional members golf clubs and, more importantly, the key decision makers in those golf clubs, such as the club secretary and general manager. Previous to working with me though, none of their advertising in this trade journal had generated one lead. So the first thing we did was speak with the publisher and negotiated a page of free space when my client was given permission to do some form of editorial. But to my client's surprise, I told them we were not going to do an editorial on their business. Now the reason I said that is that editorials can give you some good press, but in general they're as useful as a chocolate oven glove when it comes to generating client inquiries. They make the business owner feel good, but they don't do much for the bank balance. So instead, I said to my client that we were going to part publish a report. So let's take a look at the report, how we positioned it in the mind of the prospect, and how we used a very simple but massively powerful psychological trigger to generate response. So here we are at the piece that I created for the client. Now remember that one of the things that the Magneto effect does in the mind of the prospect is it stimulates internal decisions that make them take action and chase you. And one of the key things that creates an internal decision to do business with you in the mind of your client is when you start to join the conversation going on in their head. As I go through this piece, you'll see that in action, along with some very powerful techniques that make people respond and contact you. Okay, so first things first, the first thing to notice is the headline itself. As you can see, it reads, "The good old days are gone." Now this is laser targeted at the current thinking of the target audience of club secretaries who used to have their cake and eat it with waiting lists of people queuing up to join their club and pay a joining fee, and who now can't get the local community to even visit for Sunday lunch. Okay, if we just go down and look at the subheader, what we're doing here is we're introducing Steve, who's the author of the report. As we introduce him, we say, in an extract from his report. Now, why that's important is we're just letting the reader know, subliminally in a way, that this is only part of the story. And then we go on to say that the report outlines ways clubs can secure their future in today's market. Now that's key because the big worry on the mind of the reader here is they're wondering whether their club's going to be in business in the years to come. And what we're doing here is we're saying that we're going to outline a way that they could secure their future. And that's very powerful. Alright, so let's just come down the page, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at the opening here. Now I'm just going to read this to you and then tell you why it's written this way. As an ex-general manager with over 20 years experience working in and running golf clubs, I've seen a number of things that have surprised me. Now obviously, if you're going to listen to or do business with someone, you'd like to know they've got experience, and all I'm doing here is reinforcing Steve's experience in the industry. Now as we come down to this section of the report, I'm going to use a very subtle but very powerful technique. Let me just read this to you. The answer simply lies in the number of golf clubs and golf facilities that have sprung up in the last 15 years. I mean, think about it. In some parts of the UK, I swear there are more golf clubs and driving ranges than there are football pitches. Now, what have I done here? What I've done is just reminded the reader of the pain all that new competition is giving them, and I go on with, bottom line, it's a buyer's market, and the buyer is more often than not a social golfer, with an average handicap that's going up, not coming down. Not only that, but your potential member may well have children and a spouse that may want to frequent the club as well. What a difference to the time my dad had to pay a joining fee and wait for 2 years before he could hand over the cash. Ironically, that same club no longer has a joining fee, never mind a waiting list. So by this point, the reader is totally engaged, as I've just agreed with their thinking of the current situation in the marketplace. The other thing is I've done it in a way that's down to earth and engaging, and that's very important. Then I connect with them further by asking a key question that they're asking themselves, which comes in here. And it reads, here's the big question. Is your club ready for this, and has it got plans and an infrastructure in place not only to meet this new landscape but be one of the winners in this new game? And then I follow this up with a useful solution to their problem, which ensures they'll read to the end of the piece, because that's where I deliver the killer punch that gets them chasing after my client. So as it reads, so what I thought I'd share with you are the 2 questions facing most members clubs today and some helpful answers. Now, all I'm doing really here in the first question, the answer I'm giving them is to say, look, if you're not going to change, then obviously the future looks bleak. And then in the second question here, what I'm doing is I'm leading them in to a plan of attack that will help them solve the problem. Now, the audience I'm talking to are planners and work with plans every day. It's the way they think. In fact, one of the biggest hooks you can use to stimulate a positive internal decision is to offer a plan of attack that will solve your prospect's problem. So by taking them through an abbreviated plan, I'm creating a very positive internal decision to read on and buy into my client. Okay, so let's cut to the chase. Now they've come to the end of the page, and guess what? The report isn't finished. And they hit a great big box, here it is, down the bottom here, that says, with a big headline, important note to readers. Now this creates huge attention in the mind of the reader, as it's positioned as coming from the publisher, but in fact I wrote it. And here's the punchline. Just straight underneath it, due to space restrictions, we are unable to publish the rest of this special report. Now the reason I did this is I wanted to stimulate one of the most powerful internal decisions you can in a human being, and that's wanting to know what's inside the full story. You see, this is used all the time on the cover of magazines like OK and Hello, i.e. for the full story, turn to page X. And then immediately I tell them what they'll get in the rest of the report. And again, I used hooks, so that's just coming in here. I used 3 big hooks that I knew would fire up those internal decision-making muscles. Lastly, I made it as easy as possible for the reader to respond by giving them more than one way they could get the report. So that's sort of down in this section here. And that included ringing a free recorded message where the reader didn't have to talk with anyone. Again, this fires up an internal decision that says, well, that's easy, I'll just ring and leave my address. On the other hand, if they'd have had to speak to someone, then the response would have been a lot lower. So let's talk about the results. Over the space of 10 days, this free ad pulled in 52 requests for the report, each being worth an average of over £4,600. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty good return on some free ad space. But there's something that I want to leave you with from this video, and that's this all worked because I was not directly promoting my client service. Instead, it worked so well because I joined the conversation in the prospect's head, which had nothing to do with my client. Okay. That's the end of this video, and I hope it will help you to make more money and attract clients more easily without needing to sell. So have a great day and look out for the next video in the next couple of days.